Dad, say that again. You are giving all of it to him. I shot up from my chair, my voice cracking through the silent room. My father did not look at me. He turned toward my younger brother, lifted his glass, and said, I have made my decision. From this day on, everything belongs to Michael. My mother smiled with that cold, practiced grace. You were never worthy, Anna. I placed a thick envelope sealed in red wax on the table in front of them. Then open this. And tell me again who is unworthy. My father scoffed and tore the seal, but the moment his eyes reached the second line, the wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered across the wooden floor. This cannot be happening. His face drained of color. What did you do, Anna? None of them in that bright, glittering dining room knew that the words inside that red envelope marked the end of a life I had once sacrificed everything to protect. And to understand how we got here, you have to go back to the night when everything still looked peaceful right before the truth exploded. My name is Anna, the eldest daughter of the family. That night before the storm inside the red envelope arrived, the inheritance dinner was still full of light and laughter. The crystal chandelier cast warm reflections onto the long table draped in white linen. Relatives gathered, all waiting for my father to make his important announcement. He raised his glass and turned to my brother Michael, who had been gone for years and had only returned 4 weeks earlier. His smile was so gentle that for a moment I wondered if I had been overthinking everything. Then he spoke. And every word fell like stone onto the cold marble floor. The entire company, all the land, all the houses, every investment, a total of 96 billion dong now belongs to Michael. My mother nodded proudly, even looked at me with a mixture of pity and ice. She said, he deserves it more than you. The room thickened with tension, but the applause continued as if this news were completely natural. I rose, walked to the head of the table where the lights shone brightest, drawing every eye to me. I set down 4 things my father once entrusted to me in the darkest hours of his life: the medical and financial power of attorney he and my mother signed when their hands shook so badly they could not hold a pen, the ring of house keys, the key to the family safe, and 1 heavy envelope sealed in red wax. I simply whispered a soft congratulations and turned away, leaving behind whispers sharp enough to cut. My father let out a dismissive laugh, certain the envelope contained a farewell letter from a hurt daughter. He sliced through the wax, pulled out the documents, and in front of 20 relatives began to read. His eyes skimmed the first line, the second. In a single heartbeat, the smile vanished. The wine glass fell. The room froze. If you have ever been treated as worthless despite everything you sacrificed for your family, leave a comment and tell me where you are watching from. Because what happens next will show you exactly why you should never underestimate the quiet one. And to understand why everything led to that moment when the wine glass shattered, you have to go back 5 years earlier to the time when I was still living a life I thought was a dream come true. Back then, I was the lead engineering manager at a major electromechanical tech company in the city of San Diego. My yearly income was more than what many people could earn in a lifetime. I led an artificial intelligence team of over 10 of the best engineers in Southern California, preparing to close a massive investment deal. My schedule was packed with investor dinners, tech conferences, and keynote events where I was chosen to stand on stage. It felt as though life had already paved the path for me. But then, on a Tuesday morning just before 6 o'clock, my phone rang. On the other end was the charge nurse from the University Medical Center in Phoenix. Her voice trembled slightly. Your father collapsed in his office. Signs of a severe ischemic stroke. The surgical team is preparing for emergency procedures. 4 hours later, when I landed at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, my father had already been placed in a medically induced coma. Machines were breathing for him. Every breath felt like a fight between life and death. 2 days later, my mother, who had believed she only had a mild case of bronchitis, went in for tests and received a diagnosis of stage 3 lung cancer. Chemotherapy began the following week. Within 6 weeks, she lost nearly 15 pounds and grew so weak she could barely hold a glass of water. The brilliant world I used to stand in collapsed in a single breath. I requested indefinite leave that same week. Packed 2 suitcases, gave up my small apartment in downtown San Diego, and returned to my childhood bedroom in the old house in the town of Anderson. My company told me to take all the time I needed. But only 9 days later they hired someone new to replace me so quickly that any sense of loyalty evaporated before I could even feel it. The first year faded into a blur of cold hospital lights and the sharp antiseptic smell that clung to my skin. I slept more than 200 nights on a plastic chair in my father's intensive care room. Every time I closed my eyes, the monitor beeped steadily as if warning me that the moment I let my guard down, he might slip away forever. I learned how to suction my father's airway when the night nurse was overwhelmed. I learned how to mix my mother's chemotherapy medication at home because the local clinic was understaffed. 8 months in, I could insert an IV line without my hands shaking. My father finally woke after 6 weeks in a coma, but the stroke had taken his voice. For 8 long months he could only answer by nodding or squeezing my hand twice for yes and once for no. Every time he tried to open his mouth and no sound came out, it felt like something inside me was being crushed. As for my mother, her hands shook so badly she could not sign her own name on any document. That was when the hospital social worker brought my parents and me into the legal counseling office. American law is very clear. When both parents lose the ability to make medical and financial decisions, the family must appoint someone to act on their behalf, or the state will intervene. That afternoon, right there in the neurology wing, my parents signed the power of attorney forms. Their trembling signatures looked like the final strokes of 2 people desperately holding on to life. 2 nurses and a notary public stood as witnesses. From that moment on, I became the sole representative for my family in every decision. One set of shoulders carrying the entire household. One signature holding the fate of both of my parents. And it was also the moment I had no idea my life was about to turn down a road I could never return from. With that single trembling signature, I officially became the acting director of Anderson Electromechanical Engineering, a company that handled major industrial, electrical, and mechanical installations. It sounded prestigious, but in reality, I did not receive a single paycheck. I had just turned 30 and was suddenly responsible for nearly 100 engineers and technicians wiring entire high-rise buildings while still pushing my mother's wheelchair to radiation therapy every morning. I taught myself project management and construction finance through online videos and technical standards, studying until 2 or 3 in the morning after the night nurse left the room. I signed subcontractor agreements, approved payroll negotiated with demanding investors, all while my father lay in a hospital bed watching me with eyes full of apology because he could not speak a single word. Meanwhile, my younger brother Michael had vanished from our lives as if he had evaporated. The last anyone saw him was at a construction site in Colorado after an accident left him dependent on heavy painkillers. A year and a half before Dad's stroke, he was arrested for possession of illegal substances. The court gave him 2 choices: jail time or a mandatory 12-month rehabilitation program. He chose rehab. The first 6 months, the center did not allow any contact with family. After that period ended, he still never called. Then silence. My mother kept his old room exactly the same, dusting it every week, as if her son were simply away on a long project instead of choosing to disappear from us. As for me, I had no time to look for him. Every dollar the company earned had to keep the projects running and pay for my mother's experimental treatment, which insurance denied twice. I wrote the appeals myself, flew to Washington, D.C. to plead with a medical review board. By the 14th month, my father began speaking again in whispers so faint I had to lean close to hear him say the 2 soft words, "Thank you." My mother went in for new scans, and for the first time the tumor had begun to shrink. It was the first moment in a long time when I allowed myself to believe our family still had hope. But just when I thought the sky had finally begun to clear, that was the moment everything was preparing to collapse in a way none of us could have imagined. I had allowed myself to believe my family was slowly stepping out of the storm, but I was wrong. That illusion of peace was still almost 4 years away from ever reaching us. That morning, the doorbell rang exactly at 7. I was buried in payroll reports and had been awake for more than 30 hours. I opened the door half-conscious, still holding a cup of cold coffee, and saw Michael standing on the porch with nothing but a faded canvas duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked completely different, thinner, clean-shaven, with clear eyes for the first time since he was 17. He said, "I finished the rehab program. 14 months clean. The court required treatment at the state facility in Colorado, and they released me 3 weeks ago." My mother heard his voice and rushed out from the kitchen, still wearing her bathrobe. The moment she saw Michael, her knees gave out as she threw her arms around him, sobbing as if her son had just returned from a battlefield. Within an hour, she had called every relative within 100 miles to announce that her youngest was home. By noon, the house smelled like warm waffles and hope reborn. But that very afternoon, a new story began to take shape. My mother sat my father down in his recliner and spoke loudly enough for me to hear from the hallway, saying that Michael had only gone away to find a new direction in life, that he had been meeting business partners in the Rockies, that he was even taking online business courses. All the ugly truth was sanded down and replaced with polished, spotless versions. By dinner time, the entire family had settled on a perfect narrative. Michael had never struggled with addiction. He was simply a young entrepreneur preparing for his future. Everything that had happened before was erased as if it had never existed. The next day, he walked into the company as if he had never left. My mother took him straight to the executive floor and introduced him to the leadership team as the future heir of Anderson Electromechanical Engineering. And that was the moment when everything began to move off its intended path. The chief operating officer, Mark Henderson, the same man who had kept his position for nearly 5 years only because I managed every crisis behind the scenes, shook Michael's hand with the reverence of someone greeting a powerful owner. He even asked if Michael wanted the corner office repainted to his liking. 3 days later, my work account was locked. When I called the IT department, they told me Mark had ordered a full system-wide password reset for security reasons. In plain terms, I had been removed. Board meeting invitations stopped arriving as well. When I asked my father about it, he only shrugged and said that my mother believed it was time for Michael to take over everything. I still went to the company, but only by slipping through the side entrance of the production warehouse before sunrise. I worked in a forgotten corner of an empty room on the 3rd floor where no one bothered to look anymore. Quietly, I approved purchase orders that for reasons unknown no one else would sign. I corrected pricing errors that could have cost the company millions. I sent dozens of emails that never received a single reply. By day, I kept the company from collapsing. By night, I drove home, reheated old leftovers, and worked until dawn coding the thing no one in my family knew I was building. Meanwhile, Michael began holding daily morning briefings in the very conference room I once ran. He wore crisp shirts my mother ironed for him and spoke in hollow buzzwords: synergy, vertical alignment, exponential growth. People who used to bring me coffee now brought it to him. Anyone who still greeted me in the hallway did it quickly, eyes down, as if acknowledging me might get them in trouble. That first weekend, my mother transformed Michael's old bedroom into a prince's suite. New mattress, new desk, framed photos of him from his high school volleyball days. She even hung a sign on the door that read, "Michael, future Chief Executive Officer." Every time I walked past it, it felt as if the walls were closing in a little tighter around me. My father's voice had returned enough for short sentences. But instead of asking me, he turned to Michael for advice on everything from inventory levels to new product lines and whether we should bid on a major industrial project in the Southwest. Each time I tried to offer input, my mother cut me off with a gentle smile but with eyes as cold as stone. And that was when I understood my place in that house was being erased piece by piece. My mother placed her hand lightly on my shoulder and said in a voice so sweet it chilled me, "Let your brother handle it. You have done too much already." I did not respond. I only nodded and returned to my makeshift workspace, a worn desk tucked behind old filing cabinets. Quietly, I kept the company breathing while the rest of the household prepared to celebrate a man who had disappeared for years. Then came the night that sealed everything. The dining room glowed like a showroom. 22 sets of polished plates glittered on the spotless white tablecloth, the clinking of silverware against crystal mixed with the soft sound of champagne being poured by the catering staff. Every influential figure in our small family empire was there. Uncles who served on the board of directors. Cousins who owned construction supply businesses. My father's longtime golf partners. Even the local pastor had been invited. My father stood at the head of the table wearing the deep navy suit my mother had chosen that morning, which made him look healthier than he had in months. His voice had recovered enough that he did not need the microphone someone had prepared. He raised his glass and spoke loudly, "With ceremony, tonight is not just a family dinner. Tonight we pass the torch to the next generation, to the one who has proven he deserves to lead." He turned and placed his hand on Michael's shoulder. My little brother gave the exact smile he had practiced in the mirror for weeks. My father continued, "Last week I signed all the final documents. The entire estate, the company holdings, the investments, the savings, everything now belongs to Michael." Applause broke out around the table. Someone even whistled. My aunt dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief embroidered with our family name as if she were witnessing something sacred. My mother squeezed Michael's hand until his knuckles turned white, then looked straight at me across the herb-crusted lamb. She gave me the sweetest and cruelest smile I had ever seen, and said, "He deserves it far more than you ever will, Anna." Her words landed like a blade. A few cousins glanced toward me, then quickly looked away, unsure whether to feel happy or uncomfortable. In that exact moment, I knew my family had chosen their side. My uncle tried to restart another round of applause, but the sound died after only a few weak claps. I pushed my chair back and stood. The room fell silent, the tense kind of silence that descends when people sense that something terrible is about to happen. I walked along the length of the long table, my heels making no sound on the thick Persian rug. I stopped beside my father and placed 4 items onto the flawless white tablecloth, things I had prepared long before that night. First was the original medical and financial power of attorney that my parents had signed years ago, the creases still sharp because I kept it locked in a safe. Next was the ring of house keys on the old brass loop my father handed me the day I moved back home to help him. Third was the key to the safe in his study, the one holding every important family document. And last was a thick manila envelope sealed with red wax stamped with my full name. Every eye in the room followed my movements. The chandelier overhead made the red wax glimmer like fresh blood. I lifted my gaze to Michael, my expression calm, to the point of coldness, and said in a voice so soft only those nearest could hear, "Congratulations." Then I turned and walked toward the arched doorway leading to the foyer as though nothing in that room concerned me anymore. My father let out a short laugh, the same laugh he used when I was 12, begging to follow him on fishing trips. He believed the envelope held a resignation letter or some fragile apology. He lifted it, slid a butter knife under the wax, and tore it open right there at the table between 2 unfinished dessert plates. The first page slid out, and in that moment, the entire celebration twisted into a nightmare none of them ever saw coming. My father's eyes passed over the title line, then the second line, then the third. The butter knife slipped from his hand and struck the porcelain plate with a sharp clink. The color drained from his face so fast that even from several feet away I could see it clearly. He looked up at me, his mouth moving but no sound escaping, and then he suddenly shouted so loudly the crystal glasses trembled on the table, "Have you completely lost your mind?" My mother half rose from her chair, her voice shaking. "What is happening?" My father did not answer. He only stared at the stack of papers, trembling in his hands as if flames were burning across the page. His shout still echoed against the walls when he forced his voice steady and lifted the documents as though holding something toxic, reading every word aloud with a mixture of fury and disbelief. 18 months ago, when I was still unconscious and your mother was nearly collapsing from chemotherapy, my daughter Anna, the legally appointed agent for all medical and financial decisions, transferred 98% of all voting shares of Anderson Electromechanical Engineering into the Anderson Development Trust, an irrevocable trust. He stopped, swallowed hard, then pushed himself to continue. The appointed sole trustee is attorney Claire Bennett, estate and asset specialist. This trust cannot be amended under United States law. The documents were signed and notarized at the University Medical Center in Phoenix. Effective tonight, upon formal notification to all banks and financial institutions, the freeze clause activates. Any transfer, sale, pledge, or distribution involving former shareholders is void unless approved by the trustee. Any attempt to revise or revoke shall be considered invalid. Those words dropped into the room like gun smoke after a shot, turning the crowded dining hall into absolute silence. My uncle's jaw fell open. My aunt's wineglass slipped from her hand, shattered across the hardwood, and no one even moved to pick it up. My father's hands shook so violently the papers rustled like dry leaves. This cannot be legal," he whispered hoarsely. At that very moment, the phone of Greg Hayes, my father's longtime college friend and the man who managed the company's primary banking relationship, buzzed in his jacket pocket. And that was the exact moment our family's empire began to crumble. Greg pulled the phone out, glanced at the screen, and his face drained of every trace of color. He lifted his eyes to my father and spoke in a near whisper, "Richard, you should see this." He held the phone out so the table could read the notification from United American Bank. "All operating accounts, lines of credit, and payment services have been frozen effective midnight. The reason: the trust transfer documents were verified by our legal department this evening." My mother let out a sound and slid halfway out of her chair. Two cousins jumped up to catch her. Michael shot to his feet, slammed his palms against the table, then spun toward me, red-faced, veins bulging, yelling, "What the hell did you do?" I did not answer. I did not need to. The pages in my father's hands had already spoken for me. He flipped through each page, his voice rising with every line he read. He rasped, "The contingent beneficiary shall be determined at the sole discretion of the trustee. The Anderson Development Trust, a company established by Anna 3 years ago for the purpose of—" My father stopped reading, his eyes wide with shock. "You built another company with whose money he demanded," but then he fell silent because he knew the truth. That money did not come from anyone else. It came from the nights I stayed awake holding the entire family together while everything was falling apart. Greg tried again, speaking more gently. "Richard, I just finished talking to the bank director. The freeze is absolute. Tomorrow the company will not be able to process payroll without the trustees' approval. We have completely lost control." One of my cousin's wives began to sob quietly, pressing a handkerchief to her face. No one dared to speak. No one knew where to look. The room was filled only with the sound of papers trembling in my father's hands and the scattered gasps around a table that minutes earlier had been full of champagne and celebration. In that moment, I knew my family had finally realized that the years they dismissed me were the same years I had spent quietly preparing to save myself. The pastor at the end of the table stared at his plate of salmon as though he was seeing it for the first time in his life. The air was so heavy we could hear each breath. Suddenly, Michael lunged across the table, knocking over several glasses, trying to grab the documents from my father. My father yanked them close to his chest, clutching them as if letting go would make everything disappear. He roared, "You think you have the right to steal my company after everything your mother and I gave you?" I stood tall and answered in a voice so calm it startled even me. "You and Mom signed the power of attorney yourselves. Both of you were fully conscious and understood exactly what you were signing. American law does not let you take it back just because you changed your mind." My mother still half collapsed on the floor, choked out, "We thought you were helping this family, not stripping us of everything." I looked at her for a long moment, then said, "I helped you survive. You just forgot who kept everything standing." Michael slammed both palms on the table and shouted, "We will sue you. We will take this all the way." But every page bore the signature of Attorney Claire Bennett and the official seal of the Department of Justice. Irrevocable means irrevocable. Every lawyer in the room understood that. Greg only shook his head slowly. My father dropped into his chair as if someone had cut the strings holding him upright. The papers slipped from his hands and scattered across the table. One sheet landed in a smear of melting butter. The chandelier above still shone its cold, indifferent light on the 22 people who moments earlier had been celebrating a family empire, only to realize it no longer belonged to any of them. Phones began ringing before the servers could clear the dessert plates. Greg's phone lit up first, with another bank alert, then my father's, then every board member's. The same red message on every screen. Access revoked, trust freeze in effect. And within minutes, everything they thought they owned vanished. My aunt hurried into her coat, muttering something about needing to be at a job site early. My uncle stood up and left his half-finished wine behind. Only moments later, the street outside glowed with the headlights of cars pulling away from the house. No one said goodbye. No one dared look back at the dinner that had collapsed into chaos. By the time the last guest walked out, the executive inboxes of the company lit up at once with a new message from Colton Industrial Group, the corporation that built major manufacturing parks and industrial zones across the country. The subject line was "Brief selection of general contractor for full operations management system." I had read that message an hour earlier. Colton Industrial. The group expanding 18 industrial zones from the southwest to the midwest, with contracts worth hundreds of millions that everyone in my family believed would surely belong to Anderson. Electromechanical engineering had instead chosen Anderson Systems, the technical firm I had secretly founded 3 years earlier, in a cramped rental office in downtown Phoenix, while I drafted every line of software late into the night, and the old mechanical workshop under my father still glowed with the lights of the night shift. The letter from the corporation was as cold and precise as a blade. After a comprehensive evaluation, Colton Industrial Group is pleased to announce its partnership with Anderson Systems for full-scale material coordination, electromechanical equipment management, and site operations powered by artificial intelligence. Deployment begins at the start of Q1. My father read the announcement aloud in a dining room, now illuminated only by the chandelier above his drained and colorless face. Michael snatched the phone from his hand, skimmed a few lines, then hurled it into the stone fireplace, sending glass and battery fragments scattering across the floor. At 7:17 the next morning, every employee of Anderson Electromechanical Engineering received the same message from Human Resources. Due to the bank freeze, payroll processing for this period is suspended. Further updates will follow. One short sentence, but enough to extinguish the final breath of an engineering empire they once believed would be passed down for generations. At exactly 9 o'clock, the group chats of the mechanical workshop exploded like a marketplace on fire. A forklift operator posted a photo of the factory gate wrapped in iron chains by the bank's asset recovery team. The head of accounting live-streamed from the parking lot crying as she said her direct deposit had bounced back and not a single dollar had arrived. The family's longtime attorney, Thomas Reed, who had worked with my father for decades, finally returned his call after nearly 20 missed attempts. I stood outside the study door and heard every word. "Richard, I am sorry. There is a conflict of interest. Attorney Claire Bennett is now legal counsel for the trust. I cannot represent you anymore. You will need to find someone else." Then the line went dead. Michael stormed upstairs. 10 minutes later, the sound of splintering wood and shattering glass crashed from the second floor, making my mother scream his name and run after him. Something heavy slammed onto the hallway floor. Later we learned it was the ebony dresser my mother had bought him for his graduation. My father sat, collapsed on the staircase, his hands covering his head, staring at the trust documents, scattered across the steps as if they were written in a foreign language he could no longer understand. He kept whispering the same numbers over and over, tens of millions, then the mounting bank debt, then the medical bills from my mother that were still piling up. I stood in the kitchen sipping coffee I could not even taste, silently watching my family's engineering empire bleed out right in front of me. By noon, the major news outlets had already picked up the story. Someone inside Colton Industrial had leaked the award announcement. Someone at the bank had leaked the freeze order. Headlines cut like knives. Long-standing engineering firm has all accounts frozen overnight. $100 million contract awarded to rising AI competitor. Across every major site the titles appeared: Anderson Electromechanical Engineering stripped of all operating authority overnight. New AI-based engineering company secures $100 million contract. While the entire online world buzzed, my phone lit up with a very different notification. A tech investment fund from the Silicon Valley Innovation District, the same group I had quietly spoken with for 6 months, sent over a round 2 term sheet increasing the valuation the moment they saw that Anderson Systems had won the Colton contract. I replied with a single thumbs up, then turned the screen off. Upstairs, Michael had punched a hole straight through the drywall and was now curled on the landing, sobbing like a child. My mother rushed to hold him the way she had when he was 9 and broke his arm falling off a bike. But he shoved her so hard she nearly fell over the railing. My father still did not move. He did not run to help. He did not say a word. He only kept staring at one section of the trust document, the line that stated with brutal clarity that not a single share could ever return to the former owners. American law had sealed it. There was no escape, no reversal. The house sank into a suffocating silence, broken only by the occasional crash of something breaking and my mother's choked pleas. I set my empty cup in the sink, picked up the small travel bag I had packed 2 days earlier, and walked out the door without a sound. The cold November wind slapped against my face, but to me it felt sweet, like the first breath of freedom after years of suffocation. 9 months later, the for sale sign in front of the house had faded under the sun and leaned crooked to one side. The old Anderson Electromechanical Engineering sign along the county highway had been taken down early that summer, replaced by a stark white banner reading "Auction all assets to be liquidated." The Chapter 11 restructuring lasted exactly 11 weeks. Creditors smelled blood the moment the bank handed the file to the court. The judge immediately converted it to forced liquidation, leaving no chance for recovery. By June, all factory machinery had been sold off in bulk to a major corporation from the South. The office furniture was bought by a small startup for a price so low it hurt to imagine. The company that once housed nearly 100 hardworking people in the outskirts of town vanished from the map as if it had never existed at all. Our family home met the same fate only 5 months after the first missed mortgage payment. The mortgage was under my parents' names alone. The trust I had created never touched any real estate. United American Bank filed for foreclosure in the Superior Court of Harlan County, and the petition was approved immediately since my parents were no longer able to respond. The auction was held on a Tuesday morning in August. A young couple from the Anson Park subdivision bought the house for barely 2/3 of its actual value. They posted the closing photos online that same week, showing off the new quartz countertops and the freshly painted walls. There was no trace left of the family that had lived there for more than 27 years. Michael lasted only 73 days on the outside after the bankruptcy. The first time he came looking for my mother after receiving the eviction notice, he tested positive for high-dose narcotics. 2 weeks later, the police found him asleep inside a stolen scooter with a backpack full of controlled medication. A court-appointed attorney negotiated for him to serve 18 months in mandatory rehabilitation with addiction treatment. My mother burst into tears when she saw them cuff him and take him away. My father did not go to court. He did not say a word. Instead, he and my mother moved into a small upstairs apartment above an old laundromat in Eastwood, a narrow loft facing south, costing a little over $100 a month, utilities included. My father's early retirement and social assistance together totaled less than $500. My mother's chronic illness insurance covered most of her maintenance treatments, but the copay still consumed nearly half of their monthly income. They bought groceries with low-income assistance cards and kept the air conditioning set at 80 degrees to save electricity. My parents filed a total of 3 lawsuits. One with the state court claiming I exerted undue influence when they signed the papers. One with the federal court accusing me of violating filial obligations. One emergency petition demanding the trust be nullified. Every case ended the same way. The medical and financial powers of attorney were executed when both were fully competent, witnessed by medical staff, notarized and filed correctly. American law does not recognize regret as a basis to void a legal document. All claims were denied outright. My parents were ordered to cover all legal fees. Within 9 months, my father aged by a decade. His hair turned completely white, his face grew hollow, his posture bent as if life itself had folded him in half. He abandoned golf entirely. He stopped answering the phone whenever old friends called. Some mornings he simply sat on the tiny balcony of their apartment, wearing a worn robe, staring down at the parking lot from sunrise until the evening shadows covered everything. My mother once tried to reach me. She went to a public library, asked someone to help her create a new email address, and sent me one single line. "Your father and I are sorry. Please come home. We have nothing left." I never replied. I closed that inbox the same week I walked out of the house. The last time I drove past our old home in Anson Park, the new owners had already filled the yard with Halloween decorations. Glowing skeletons lined the lawn, orange lights wrapped around the trees where I used to hang lanterns as a child. The porch where Michael and I learned to ride our bikes now had a welcome mat that said, "Welcome home," in cheerful letters. I did not stop. I just kept driving. Today, I stand on the 42nd floor of the Tilden Tower in downtown San Diego, watching the sunlight shimmer across Lake Harrison, the same way it did in the summers when I rode my bike around it as a kid. The glass wall in front of me carries the new logo of Anderson Systems, the company I founded and took public 4 months ago. The opening bell placed its valuation at nearly $2 billion. The stock has been climbing relentlessly ever since. My office takes up half the floor. Floor-to-ceiling glass. White oak floors. A single white orchid on the shelf. No family photos. No sentimental keepsakes. Nothing that reminds me of the old neighborhood, the hospital nights, the antiseptic smell, or the slow unraveling of loyalty. When I left home, I changed every phone number, every email, every account. I blocked every relative, every old classmate, anyone who still remembered my mother's landline. My assistant screens all incoming messages. Not one of their words has reached me. On sleepless nights, I still open the real estate listing for my old house. The photos rotate every few months. New furniture, new walls, new faces smiling inside rooms that once belonged to me. The algorithm thinks I am shopping for property. It does not know I am only checking whether the past is still locked away somewhere I never have to return to. And I truly never went back. Not for the Lunar New Year. Not for my father's birthday. Not even when Michael overdosed a second time, and a social worker from the county hospital called looking for the nearest family member. I let the phone ring until voicemail shut itself off. People ask me if I feel guilty, mostly reporters. They want tears or at least a moment where my voice cracks. They want the portrait of a daughter who built an empire from revenge and now wrestles with remorse. But no, I do not feel guilt. And I do not feel victory either. People think revenge tastes sweet. But the truth is, it burns like ash from the very first bite. What I felt was only silence, a kind of quiet that comes after every scream in your head finally goes still. I kept the company alive when no one else stood beside it. I turned 5 years of sleepless nights into an operations platform that predicts failures and coordinates materials with near-perfect accuracy for entire industrial districts. I created hundreds of stable jobs in a city that once watched the old factory gates rust shut after bankruptcy. I built 2 free technical centers in the north side of the city, carrying my mother's last name, not because I wanted her gratitude but simply because I could. That is the part outsiders will never understand. I did not take anything from anyone. I only refused to let my life's work become an undeserved trophy in someone else's hands. Legally, I still sign documents as Anna, but the name feels like an old coat someone else draped over my shoulders. It has been more than a year since I have spoken it to another human being. When people ask what the letter A in the company's name stands for, I just smile and tell them it means assurance, a quiet kind of peace. Some lessons cost everything to learn. Never give more than you can afford to lose. Never confuse tolerance with forgiveness. And never assume the people who need you today will remember you tomorrow. And if one day they try to hand the work of your life to someone who was never there when you were bleeding for it, remember that the law is also a weapon if you are steady enough to hold it while everyone else is still clapping. I do not forgive. I do not look back. And on the road ahead, I carry nothing that belongs to them. Thank you to everyone who stayed with me until the end of this story. I hope somewhere within these moments you found something to think about, a lesson worth holding on to, or simply a little understanding to remind you that you are not alone in this life. If this story touched you, leave a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I read every message, and each of your words becomes a piece that helps the next story take shape. I will see you in the next video. Take care, keep your heart warm, and remember, on this journey you always have me walking beside you with the stories no one tells but everyone needs to hear.